welcome to our first video. I hope you like the titles. I spent a whole 2 hours on a quest deep into my mind and soul trying to figure out how to do that blessed zoom. If you want better editing skills, then make sure you click subscribe and the little notification bell coming up now. And check out our Patreon, also coming up now. So this is going to be about the main regions of China.
China.
Before we look at each region, we need to consider why the Han Chinese expanded from the Yellow and Yangtze River drainage basin millennia ago to become the behemoth it is today. One idea is the security. Throughout its vibrant history, China has been susceptible to raiders and foreign imperialism. The Mongols came from the flatlands of the north. The Weeping Angels of the West, also known as the Terracotta Army, came from the flatlands in the east. The Russian, French, and British empires in particular circulated the nation, and as recently as World War II, the Japanese Empire occupied parts of China. By extending boundaries to the mountains, creating buffer zones inside borders on the deserts, and establishing more of a presence at sea, you would imagine China would finally be secure. Equally, another reason for the drive could be the booming population of the Han Chinese people, but most would consider this as a consequence. After Mao's Great Famine in communist times, high birth rates were encouraged, and as we can see on the map, the Han people have been spreading across China and are now the world's largest ethnicity, taking up 18% of the world's population. Is this a tactic used to consolidate Chinese rule over the regions? Is it, as Bismarck would put it, negative integration? Let's check the various regions. This is the basic situation. 1. Tibet. It was annexed by China after World War II, and Tibet has a long-standing resistance that most will know about. Inner Tibet is currently an autonomous region, but Outer Tibet is separate. The issue of Tibetan independence has been championed by none other than the Dalai Lama, and resides in India. China have moved to replace the Dalai Lama with the Communist Party approved candidates, but while the current Dalai Lama is still alive and well, the Communist Party will struggle to overturn the ancient Buddhist and Tibetan cultural traditions, which could be the reason why China is encouraging mass migration of the Han people. Yet Tibet has the lowest percentage of the Han in all Chinese regions so far. Regarding the international relations around the area, we need to consider two issues. 1. Kashmir, the Indian-Pakistani conflict, which will come in a future video. Through Tibet, China has a large stake in the conflict, particularly with the Aksai Chin. The Aksai Chin is an ancient trading route, a small, cold, 5,000-meter high desert valley. This could be vital for self-defense, deployment of troops, with potentially hostile neighbours and potential trade routes. The Arunachal Pradesh. It is in the northeast Indian Himalayas, between Bhutan and the Indian region Assam, where they make wonderful tea. It is part of what was maybe considered Outer Tibet before 1914. Note the maybe. This issue arose as the Indians, directed by the British, and the Tibetans, who were directed by China, concluded in the 1914 Simla Conventions that the McMahon Line, or McMahon Line, another amazingly straight line the British Empire were really good at drawing, was the border. Before then, though, historically, no one really cared about the exact border, as herders and mini ANCAP communities, nicknamed Zomia, roamed the area freely, with a vague notion of a border defined by geography. Now, though, China are putting down their claims and have built roads and fences on the border and repeatedly claim it is their land. The next region is the Xinjiang province. This region is originally ethnically populated by the Uyghur people. No, they don't contact the dead on regular basis. There are Turkic people, which means Central Asian, not Turkish, and Muslims, but have been in the news recently due to a sinister re-education camps directed by the communist government that have been doctored out of some satellite images. Subsequently, the Han population is also on the rise there. It appears the Chinese government is trying to make the region more homogeneous and establish a firm presence on the relatively flat northeast border, although the border does involve parts of the Taklamakan and Gobi deserts, and a tiny bit of the incredibly cold Siberia. The locals are resisting this and are calling the region East Turkestan in an independence bid. Al-Qaeda, though, have affiliate themselves with the Islamic resistance and have somewhat tainted it. However, we can't disregard this East Turkestan Islamic movement as an entirely terrorist group, because one man's terrorist is always going to be another man's martyr, and especially given the Chinese government is controlling the data that goes in and comes out of a region, we can never know what's happening. So while we remain cautious, they could be terrorists, and probably are, we can't be certain, and we can't condemn them until we know for sure. The region is also the only bit that borders Afghanistan. A strange geographical feature there, called the Wakhan Corridor, which is basically a panhandle. Nothing too important there, just an interesting fact. And finally, the region also has stakes in Kashmir, as a tiny bit of the northeast of Baltistan was claimed to be Uyghur territory historically, so Pakistan gifted it to the Chinese in 1963. Thirdly, we come on to Hong Kong. Hong Kong is an ex-British colony that enjoys democracy and free market capitalism, everything the Chinese government is against. This is the reasoning behind the recent troubles, most notably the riots last summer and autumn about their executive, Carrie Lam, pushing an extradition bill so Hong Kongers can be arrested by the mainland Chinese government. She has since withdrawn the bill, but the tensions remain. In 1997, the Chinese government took control of Hong Kong back from the British, but on terms negotiated by the former British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, called the One Country, Two Systems doctrine, where Hong Kong would remain with its own constitution, democracy, currency, and market, despite formally being Chinese until 2047. As China was economically weak back then, while Hong Kong was strong, they agreed, but no Chinese cities like Shanghai are incredibly rich compared to Hong Kong. The Chinese government have less reason to respect the agreement. Hong Kong has always been a majority Han Chinese place, with British expats, so the link it has to China are strong. It is also a huge geopolitical significance to it. It borders the South China Sea, where China are trying to reclaim land in line with the UN law of the sea, but brutally pushing over local fishermen, for example, ignoring other, perhaps more legitimate claims to the sea and artificially creating islands. This is to allow for Chinese warm water ports of significant naval consideration and access to resources. This is a huge issue and could even have its own video, so we're just brushing over it here. 2. It is near the East China Sea, which is less significant as that is mainly a low-level dispute between the Japanese, Koreans and Russians, plus China already have some ports there. But every little helps, I suppose. And 3, it is the mouth of the large Pearl River Delta, which is a good shipping route, making the area convenient for Chinese control. Going on to the 4th main region, we have Taiwan. Taiwan is actually a different China, but the same China, because it is them and they are it, but they aren't all together goo goo goo. When the Communist Party overthrew the Nationalist Party in 1949, after the Nationalists themselves overthrew the Emperor in 1912, they fled to the island of Taiwan. Now, they agree to disagree on pretty much everything, and mainland China is the People's Republic, while Taiwan is the Republic. You're only allowed to recognize one China, though. So in 1971, what we deem as China now was represented on the UN Security Council for the first time, because before then, it was Taiwan. Taiwan is obviously a Han nation, and is simply the democratic free market version of normal China, like Hong Kong was a few decades ago. In Taiwan, the political spectrum is very different to what we know. Instead of a normal left-right spectrum, it's pan-green to pan-blue, which are variations of wanting to reunify with China, wanting to carry on as they are and claim to be the real China, or just go out and declare independence as a new nation, Taiwan. These situations mean a lot to the pride of the Chinese people on both sides, and geopolitically it is very important, as the US used Taiwanese waters to observe Chinese ships. Overall, there are 4 major different parts to China: Tibet, Xinjiang, and Hong Kong, under the control of the Communist Party and in the People's Republic of China, then Taiwan, under the nationalist government in the Republic. Other important areas have been overlooked though. Notable omissions include Macau, which plays an important role, and it is basically in the same shoes as Hong Kong. It's a special autonomous region, although it is smaller and ex-Portuguese. There's Inner Mongolia, an autonomous region up north, that has an independence movement, but it is less active and isn't covered by the media primarily because of a high Chinese integration, with the Han population being quite high. Then there's Manchuria, but that's been so integrated into China by now, it only really has historical significance when regarding separatism. There are many more regions, too many to mention, and the issue of the South China Sea is huge and complicated, having been simplified way too much. Soon, we will look at the international involvement of China and how that fits into Chinese geopolitics. Until then, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. For more, go check out our Patreon, TikTok, and Instagram. Links in the description below.